First, let's take a look at a course introduction. Credit reports and credit scoring are one of the most misunderstood items in an individual's financial life, be it personal or entrepreneurial. In this course, we will not be going over debt collection, although that topic is vital for everyone to understand. Credit scoring and credit reports can be an incredibly complex topic, as there is a lot of confusion between what is the truth and what is misleading. Bad information has been perpetrated by many in the credit fields. Simply put, credit scoring is a way for creditors such as banks, lending institutions, credit card companies, and any other company willing to give money to an individual for the purpose of profit to minimize the risk. To put it simply, they want to get their money back plus some unless otherwise noted. The scoring method I'm speaking of is the FICO scoring method. Now, FICO stands for Fair Isaac Company. FICO is estimated to be used by major lenders and creditors in 95% of all credit decisions, whether creditor will give you credit or not, and under what conditions if they do. By the time you have completed this course, you will understand your rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act: the right to be informed, the right to know, the right to a credit score, the right to challenge, the right to limitation and scope, the right to your credit report that is restricted, and pre-screened offers. You will know how a credit score is derived and what it is. You'll know the building blocks of your credit score, such as hard inquiries, soft inquiries, trade lines, public records, and collections. Then we go on to the 5 pillars of your credit score: the payment history, the amount owed, the credit story, the last application for credit, and the types of credit. We will go into how to build credit, though things can happen to anybody, how to build installment trade lines, how to build revolving trade lines, the definition of credit utilization, how secured credit cards work, and a caveat on secured credit card fees. Next, we'll go into credit reports, errors on credit reports, confusion in the scoring system, misleading FICO scores, and mortgage model confusion. And last, we will go into ways to maximize your credit score: paying bills on time, lowering your ratios, when to pay a credit card bill, why you do not pay a debt collector, and applying for a credit card. Now we begin section 2. Looking at the Fair Credit Reporting Act, there are many types of consumer reporting agencies, including credit bureaus and specialty agencies. The well-known are the 3 major credit bureaus: Experian, which is the largest; Equifax, which is the oldest; and TransUnion. There are others also in total, according to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Out of the Federal Trade Commission, there are a total of 43 different consumer reporting agencies: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion are non-government agencies and exist for profit. Now, the Federal Fair Credit Reporting Act was enacted on October 26, 1970 to promote the truth, justice, and privacy of information was in the files of consumer reporting organizations. One of the items that the Fair Credit Reporting Act addresses is this: you have to be informed if information and facts in your file have been used against you. If you have ever been refused credit or insurance or employment due to information on or in your credit report, you must be informed, and they must provide you with the name, address, and phone number of the company that provided the information. Have you ever attempted to purchase something at a store or applied for a loan for a vehicle and been rejected? How about your employee or a prospective employer pulls a credit report for a job placement or for employment, and they deny you based on your credit report? Here's where this part of the Fair Credit Reporting Act applies to you. Within 30 days. They must send you written notification as to the bureau or bureaus they use to in contact information for that bureau or bureaus. In other words, you must be informed, and the prospective creditor, the prospective creditor must provide you with the name, address, and phone number of the company that provided the information. I want you to truly understand this next right. There is the right to challenge incomplete, inverifiable, or inaccurate information. If you identify information in your credit file that may be incomplete, inverifiable, or inaccurate and report it to the bureaus must investigate. Credit bureaus will have to correct or eliminate inaccurate, incomplete, or inverifiable data within 30 days of the challenge. Now, just because an item is on your credit report does not mean the creditor has the right to place it on your credit report. This is what most people simply have a hard time comprehending. The creditor must have the proof, and you will never know if they have the proof unless you challenge them. The next right that an individual has regarding the Fair Credit Reporting Act is a right to a credit score. Do you have the right to request a credit score? Yes, you do, but not the right to have a credit score for free. Just be aware that the credit score you purchase may not be a FICO score, and probably will not be the one that you need when you are applying for a home loan or a car loan. Now, more on that later. Even though the scores that Credit Karma.com are free, they are not even final scores, so they have little value other than to show trends. The other downside to Credit Karma is that they only pull from 2 bureaus, Equifax and TransUnion. Experian is omitted. The only true credit score you can rely on will come from FICO.com. Consumer reporting agencies cannot report outdated average data. Generally, a consumer reporting agency cannot report negative data that is more than 7 years old or bankruptcies which are greater than 10 years old. The data that establishes when this time period begins is 30 days beyond the date of last activity. The date of last activity would be the last date you made a payment, and the time period begins a month and a day beyond that time. So let's say in June 2015 you made your last payment. The date of last activity would be June 2015, and the time frame starts 30 days later or July 2015 depending upon where you live. The date of less activity affects the statute of limitations. Again, more on that later. The 7 years a negative item stays on your credit report is directly connected to the date of your last activity. Now having access to your credit record is restricted. A consumer reporting agency could supply information about you only to people with a legitimate need. Herein lies the rub. Who has a legitimate need? Certainly a creditor. If you are applying for credit, what about insurance? What about a business? What about employment? A consumer reporting agency may not provide details about you to your employer or a prospective employer without having your written consent. Now having access to your credit record is restricted. A consumer reporting agency could supply information about you only to people with a legitimate need. Herein lies the rub. Who has a legitimate need? Certainly a creditor. If you are applying for credit, what about insurance? What about a business? What about employment? A consumer reporting agency may not provide details about you to your employer or a prospective employer without having your written consent. In the good old days, you did not need to have credit to get credit. Everything was regional, and banks made the determination based on the type of job you had, the amount of money you had as a down payment, your ties to the region, and the city you were in. A look at your credit report, and a group of people that got together once every 3 to 7 days to go over the loan applications they had received during the week. There were no credit scores, that everything depended upon a group of bankers and their evaluation of the total loan application to include the interview with you today. Financial decisions are score-driven. Your credit score is dependent upon what you are attempting to finance: a credit card, a home loan, a car loan, or a store credit card. The final score is weighted depending upon the items you are attempting to purchase. There is a final score for revolving debt, a FIDE score for installment debt, a final score for insurance. A credit score can make it easier to determine your creditworthiness. What happens if you do not have a score? What happens to the individual if you have a bankruptcy on your report? How do you overcome those obstacles? This section is devoted to how to build credit. It is easier today to build credit than it ever has been. But the key is to balance installment debt with revolving debt without having to purchase anything. You can build credit solely with credit cards, which has revolving debts. You can build them solely with installment debt, such as car loans. But what happens if you do not need a car? We will get into that shortly. The key to building credit is to establish both revolving and installment debt in order to create a balance between the two. Remember the 5 pillars of your credit score. 10% of your credit score is determined and taste depending upon the types of credit used. It will only help your score if you balance these by having 1 or 2 of each 2 credit cards into installment. I want to start out by showing what I believe to be the most important item in a final score recovery, which is installment debt. Part of cycle credit scoring is based on the balance between installment debt and revolving debt. Installment debt is debt that has a fixed term on the loan for it. For example, an automobile loan. So you purchase a $35,000 vehicle, pay 15% interest over a set period of time, let's say 36 months. You then start making payments based on a predetermined dollar amount, a fixed interest rate, fixed period of time. Revolving debt is different, and I will go over that the next section. It is important to note that although you can use a bank for this process, it is much simpler, less expensive, and more cost-effective to use a credit union. You must pay for membership into the credit union ranging from $5 to $25. Typically, depending upon your location and your employment, credit unions vary and are typically local. If you belong to a company that has a credit union, you could certainly utilize that. Go to the credit union and open a secured savings account in the amount of $340 with online access. In other words, you can get on by the computer. The amount that we're using here is hypothetical. It can be virtually any dollar amount and will be determined by the credit union. Ask the credit union what the maximum loan term is, etc. for that if possible. In this example, where we will use 60 months or 5 years, you then borrow back from yourself $300 from the $40 that is left in the account. You will make automatic payments debited from this account back to the credit union, a loan from yourself to yourself. In a nutshell, you have just invested $40 to ensure a new positive installment line that now reports perfect credit data to the 3 major bureaus. And if you are married or have a significant other, both of you can be on this account. This one account can benefit both of you. Using this example, you will have borrowed $300 at whatever interest rate they charge. In my example, I'm using 3% over a 5-year term, and your payment will be $5.39. Remember, this money is being taken from the $40 you have left in the account. If you let it run for the entire 36 months, the total money spent by you is $14.08. Now, the National Credit Union Administration is the U.S. independent federal agency that supervises and charters federal credit unions. As of 2016, in the United States, there were 5,737 credit unions with 103,992 million members, comprising 45.4% of the economically active population. Where do you locate a credit union that's close to you? When people get into trouble, is the credit utilization ratio how much you borrow versus your limit? And this is key to credit scoring. Starting out, let's say you go to the grocery store and you purchase $175 in groceries, leaving a balance of $125 available to you on the account, being that your maximum amount you can totally use is $300. Your credit utilization ratio now is at 58%. Now you go back the following week and spend another $100 on groceries. Your total credit utilization is at 92%. This will hurt your 5 Coast Guard because it is a payoff with the final scoring system likes to see. It has nothing to do with the dollar amount you have borrowed, but it has everything to do with your credit utilization ratio. And if it is above 15%, you will start to see your score drop. To summarize this section, there are 2 different ways to establish or reestablish a credit installment debt. Do yourself a favor and check out your local credit union to establish a trade lines or credit unions as fairly simple, straightforward, and generally attainable. Revolving debt. Utilizing revolving debt to establish trade lines and to increase your credit score is the second and always to reestablish a credit. Almost anyone can get a secure collateralized credit card. Just be careful how it is used and know about credit utilization.